Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage, and this is where things get really interesting because we're looking at arguably one of the most complete shinobi to ever exist in the Naruto universe. First off, context matters here. Hiruzen was trained by both Hashirama and Tobirama, the first and second Hokage. Yeah, he learned directly from the guy who could literally reshape continents with wood style, and the man who invented half the forbidden jutsu in the series. That's like being mentored by both Einstein and Oppenheimer at the same time. Now, what made Hiruzen special as both a shinobi and a teacher? The man knew every single jutsu in the Hidden Leaf Village. Every single one. We're talking about someone who mastered all 5 nature transformations, could use techniques from every category, ninjutsu, taijutsu, genjutsu, and had the battle IQ to know exactly when to use what. His hand seal speed was absolutely ridiculous, and his tactical mind was sharp enough to go toe-to-toe with Orochimaru, one of the most cunning villains in the series, even in his old age. When he fought Orochimaru during the Konoha Crush, he was literally an old man, way past his prime, and he still managed to seal both the reincarnated First and Second Hokage, plus take away Orochimaru's arms. Orochimaru straight up admitted that if Hiruzen had been just 10 years younger, he would have died that day. Yeah, that's what you'd expect from the student of a legend. The legendary Sannin. Now we're getting to the students that literally defined an entire era of the shinobi world, the legendary Sannin. 3 Genin that Hiruzen himself took on as his personal team, and the fact that all 3 of them were considered for Hokage at different points tells you everything you need to know about the level Hiruzen brought them to. What did Hiruzen actually teach the Sannin? First, he made sure all 3 mastered the summoning technique, each with their own unique contract. And later, Jiraiya got toads, Tsunade got slugs, Orochimaru got snakes. Hiruzen understood that true power comes from partnership, from building connections beyond yourself. He also had a super powerful summon himself, Enma, so he understood. But more than that, he taught them the fundamentals that let them grow into completely different types of legendary shinobi. Think about what happened after they left his tutelage. During the Second Shinobi World War, these 3 fought Hanzo the Salamander, a man so dangerous he was called a demigod, and they were the only Konoha ninja to survive that battle. Hanzo himself was so impressed he gave them the title Legendary Sannin. But here's where it gets interesting. The Sannin were always in conflict with each other. Tsunade called it a 3-way deadlock, and she wasn't wrong. They constantly disagreed, constantly competed, and eventually all 3 went their separate ways. Some fans say that's a failure of Hiruzen's teaching. That conflict, that rivalry, that's exactly what pushed each of them to reach heights they never would have achieved otherwise. Hiruzen gave 3 completely different people the tools to become legends in their own right, and that's actually harder to do. Kakashi. Moving on to Minato Namikaze's students, we need to talk about Kakashi Hatake, and this is where the student-teacher dynamic gets absolutely wild, because Kakashi wasn't just any student. This guy was a legitimate prodigy who was taking on A-rank missions at 13 years old. 13. Most kids that age are still learning basic 3-man squad formations, and Kakashi was out there handling missions that could decide the outcome of wars. Here's what makes the Minato-Kakashi relationship so crucial to understand. Minato didn't just teach Kakashi techniques. What Minato really hammered into him was something Kakashi initially struggled with his entire early life, the value of teamwork over individual strength. And that's ironic, right? Because Kakashi was so naturally gifted that he could have easily coasted on raw talent alone. He had everything: ninjutsu talent, taijutsu skill, battle IQ. You see, later on he developed into a ninja whose base level taijutsu was on par with Guy, without opening the gates, of course, as smart as Shikamaru, and mastered the Sharingan, like Sasuke. When you're just so good, it's easy to think you don't need anyone else. But Minato saw through that. He recognized that Kakashi's genius could become a weakness if he stayed isolated. The lesson really clicked when Obito Uchiha, Kakashi's teammate, gave him his Sharingan right before dying. That moment crystallized everything Minato had been trying to teach, and it was from that point on that Kakashi also learned to be less arrogant and impulsive. Later on, Kakashi became known as the Copy Ninja, a man whose reputation alone made S-rank Akatsuki members proceed with caution. He fought evenly with the genius Itachi Uchiha in combat. He fought Kisame and Kakuzu to standstills. Pain himself considered Kakashi a threat. Later in his career, he even pressured Koji Kashin, an enhanced clone of Jiraiya and one of Kara's strongest members, into retreating. That's the resume of someone who learned from one of the fastest shinobi in history. Oh, and he also learned the Rasengan. But here's the part that proves Minato's teaching stuck. The Sage of Six Paths himself said Kakashi's greatest strength wasn't his combat ability. It was his skill as a teacher and leader. Kakashi took what Minato taught him about teamwork and passed it down to Team 7, which directly contributed to defeating Kaguya Otsutsuki. Think about that progression. Minato taught Kakashi. Kakashi taught Naruto. And that chain of teaching helped save the entire world. Some people say Kakashi was just naturally talented and would have been great regardless. Maybe. But without Minato's influence, that talent might have burned out in isolation before it ever reached its full potential. Obito. Now let's talk about Obito Uchiha, and this is where things get complicated because we're looking at probably the most tragic student-teacher relationship in the entire series. Obito was on the same team as Kakashi under Minato's leadership. But here's the thing that people forget. When Obito was a genin, he was mediocre at best. Average on a good day. He struggled to keep up with his classmates at the academy, and watching Kakashi's natural talent while knowing he couldn't match it ate him alive. But unlike other Uchiha who were often geniuses but cold and brooding, he was warm, kind-hearted, and very spirited. He always emphasized that those who break the rules are scum, but those who abandon their friends are worse than scum. He valued his teammates above everything else, especially Rin Nohara, the girl he loved. That's why when Obito went back to save Kakashi during a mission and got crushed by a boulder, his final act was giving Kakashi his Sharingan. He wanted to give Kakashi, his comrade, the power to protect the one teammate they had left. Except he didn't die. Madara saved him, and then Obito witnessed Rin's death at Kakashi's hand. And that moment shattered everything. The world where teammates mattered, where bonds were sacred, where hard work led to acknowledgement. Obito decided that the world was fundamentally broken and needed to be destroyed. Here's what makes this so devastating. Obito was a late bloomer who dramatically improved under training. His time as Minato's student was relatively short, and his talent hadn't fully emerged before he was nearly crushed to death by a boulder. As a result, his power increased mainly after the Minato era, that is, during the time he trained under Madara. After Madara took over his education, Obito became powerful enough that people questioned if he actually was Madara. As a teenager, he took control of the 4th Mizukage and effectively controlled an entire hidden village. He nearly destroyed Konoha, and posed such a threat that Minato, his own teacher, became convinced Obito would bring catastrophe to the world. Later, as an adult, Obito held his own against Konoha's top shinobi and killer bee simultaneously. When he became the Ten-Tails Jinchuriki, his power exceeded Hashirama Senju himself. He fought 3 powerful Hokage with ease and could have destroyed the entire allied shinobi forces. But in the end, Obito was still the same Obito from the past. Later, when fighting the entire shinobi world, he still called Minato Sensei, and he even remembered the image of his teacher and teammates to help him control the power of the Ten-Tails. Rin Nohara. Rin Nohara is the 3rd member of Team Minato, and here's where we need to address something important. A lot of fans overlook Rin because she died young and her combat feats aren't flashy compared to Kakashi or Obito. Rin specialized as a medical ninja, but she also learned to use fire, water, and yang-release nature transformations, but of course her real value was her medical ninjutsu aptitude. She could teach her teammates basic first aid, which meant even if she went down, they had backup knowledge. The most impressive display of her skill? During a mission, she successfully implanted Obito's Sharingan into Kakashi's damaged eye socket using only basic medical tools in the middle of a war zone. Actually, dojutsu in Naruto are kind of like light bulbs. You can just pop them in and out with bare hands, no problem. But the most notable thing was that she was forced to become the 3-Tails Jinchuriki as part of a scheme to destroy Konoha. Not just anyone can become a host, so we can infer that she had a relatively strong physical foundation and chakra reserves. Shizune. Shizune is Tsunade's first apprentice, and this is where we see what happens when the greatest medical ninja in history decides to pass down her knowledge. Shizune became a Jonin-level medical ninja under Tsunade's tutelage, and the fact that Jiraiya trusted her enough to fight Kabuto Yakushi, Orochimaru's right-hand man, tells you everything about her capabilities. Under Tsunade's training, Shizune's chakra control became so refined that she could lead teams performing procedures where the slightest mistake would be fatal, like regenerating a person's entire injured body with new cells. During the 4th Shinobi World War, she was put in charge of the entire logistical support and medical division of the Allied shinobi forces. That's not a position you give to someone who's just decent. She couldn't use the strength of 100 technique, which means she took on a support role rather than direct combat. However, Shizune developed a combat style built around poison, something Tsunade herself rarely used. She can emit poisonous gas that's fatal from a single breath and coat her senbon and kunai with paralyzing toxins. She was even fast enough to catch Kabuto off guard during their first encounter. Sakura. Sakura Haruno is Tsunade's second apprentice, and this is probably the most dramatic student transformation in the entire series. When Sakura first joined Team 7 as a Geiche Nin, Shikamaru straight up called her a kunoichi with no particular talent. That's harsh, but it wasn't wrong. She was smart, but at that time it was only theoretical intelligence. That was it. During missions, she constantly relied on Sasuke and Naruto to carry her through combat situations. She knew it, they knew it, everyone knew it. But here's where Tsunade's teaching becomes absolutely crucial. Sakura recognized she was dead weight and made a choice. She sought out Tsunade and asked to be trained, and Tsunade saw something in her that most people missed. For 2.5 years, Tsunade rigorously forged her, and what came out the other side was a completely different shinobi. What did Tsunade actually teach Sakura? Everything. Medical ninjutsu at the highest level. Chakra control so precise she could heal injuries that would kill most people. And most importantly, the superhuman strength technique that Tsunade herself pioneered. That strength isn't just about punching hard. It requires perfect chakra control, split-second timing, and the ability to channel massive amounts of chakra into a single point. Tsunade also taught Sakura the strength of 100 seal, a technique that only a handful of people in history have ever mastered. Actually, officially, it's just two, Tsunade and Sakura. By the time Sakura completed that seal during the Fourth Shinobi World War, she had finally earned her place fighting alongside her teammates. Think about that for a second. She was confident enough to shed the feeling of being a burden and no longer needed to hide behind her two teammates for protection. Aside from Tsunade, she was the only medical ninja allowed to charge into the front lines, healing and tanking damage at the same time. Multiple high-level ninja remarked that she would likely surpass Tsunade, and after the war, Naruto himself made her the head of Konoha's medical department. Here's the controversy, though. Some fans argue Sakura never really caught up because she doesn't have the destructive output of Naruto or Sasuke. That's comparing apples to nuclear weapons. Sakura's role was never to match their offense. What Tsunade taught her was how to be the anchor that keeps everyone alive, the support that makes victory possible, and the medic who can turn a losing battle into a winnable one. She went from literal zero to becoming one of the greatest medical ninja in the world. If that's not the ultimate testament to Tsunade's teaching ability and Sakura's capability, I don't know what is. Team 7. Now we're getting to Team 7, and this is where Kakashi's role as a teacher becomes fascinating because he was working with arguably the most unbalanced team in Konoha's history at the beginning. You've got Naruto, the dead last student in his class, Sakura, who had book smarts but zero combat ability, and Sasuke, a prodigy from a massacred clan with a revenge obsession. On paper, this team should have imploded within a week. But here's what Kakashi understood that most people miss. He wasn't trying to turn them into masters of advanced jutsu right away. What Kakashi taught Team 7 were the fundamentals that every other teaching built upon: chakra control, teamwork, and the mindset of what it means to be a shinobi. He gave them the Bell test, the same one Minato gave him, and unlike every previous Nin team he'd tested, they actually passed because they figured out the real lesson, that teammates matter more than individual success. Now, let's talk about what makes this complicated. Each member of Team 7 eventually left to train under one of the legendary Sannin. Naruto went to Jiraiya, Sakura went to Tsunade, and Sasuke went to Orochimaru. Some people argue that proves Kakashi's teaching wasn't enough, that they needed real masters to reach their potential. In reality, Kakashi truly didn't spend as much time with his students as other Jonin did. And later on, Sai even temporarily replaced Sasuke in Team 7's lineup. But Kakashi was, in fact, the teacher who stayed with them all the way until the final battle. Moreover, Kakashi's influence on Sasuke was much greater than most people realize. Kakashi taught him the Chidori, his signature lightning-style assassination technique. That wasn't just handing over a cool move. The Chidori requires incredible chakra control, precise timing, and the Sharingan to use effectively. Kakashi was teaching Sasuke how to leverage his Uchiha bloodline in combat. Later, Sasuke developed that single technique into an entire system of lightning-style jutsu. The Chidori became the foundation for everything from Chidori Senbon to, everything later. Without Kakashi's initial teaching, none of that evolution happens. Here's the real measure of Kakashi's success as a teacher. During the Fourth Shinobi World War, Team 7 reunited and fought against the Ten Tails, Obito, Madara, and finally Kaguya Otsutsuki. The Sage of Six Paths himself said Kakashi's greatest strength was as a teacher and leader, and that strength was vital in defeating Kaguya. 3 kids who should have been a disaster as a team became the group that helped save the entire world. That was thanks to Kakashi, who connected all 3 of them together. Konohamaru. Konohamaru Sarutobi is Naruto's first real student, and this relationship is interesting because it started way before Naruto ever became Hokage. When they first met, Naruto was still a genin, and Konohamaru was just an academy student who was failing his classes. But Konohamaru wasn't failing because he lacked talent. He was lazy and wanted quick results without putting in the work. Sound familiar? That's exactly who Naruto used to be. What did Naruto teach Konohamaru that actually mattered? The first lesson was perseverance. Naruto showed him through example that there are no shortcuts to real strength. You put in the hours, you fail, you get back up, and you keep training until your body remembers the technique even when your mind is exhausted. Once Konohamaru internalized that lesson, his talents exploded. He went from struggling with basic academy jutsu to becoming someone Temari acknowledged for pressuring her in combat. He even managed to take down Pain's Naraka path during the village invasion, which is an insane feat for a genin. But the technique that defines their student-teacher relationship is the Rasengan. Naruto taught Konohamaru his signature move, and this matters more than people realize. The Rasengan isn't just a powerful attack. Learning it requires understanding chakra rotation, control, and concentration. At first, Konohamaru needed a shadow clone to form it, just like Naruto originally did. But eventually, he mastered it. Then he learned the big ball Rasengan without anyone teaching him how. As an adult, he can perform it with both hands simultaneously, and here's where it gets crazy. He could use wind release to strengthen his Rasengan. Before Konohamaru, only Naruto himself had ever accomplished that. He can even create a wind barrier around it strong enough to block a Chidori strike from Hidari, a member of the God Tree. By adulthood, Konohamaru became one of Konoha's top jonin, regarded an elite of the Sarutobi clan. He can summon both giant toads and ninja monkeys. He mastered his grandfather Hiruzen's techniques like Fire Dragon Flame Bullet. He became proficient in Bojutsu, Fuinjutsu, and multiple nature transformations including fire, wind, lightning, earth, and yang release. He wields trench blade knuckles like his late uncle Asuma and can use the flying swallow technique to deflect enemy attacks. Some fans say Konohamaru never lived up to the hype because he's not on the same level as Naruto and Sasuke. And actually, he shared the same dream Naruto once had, to become Hokage and carry on the will of fire. But it seems like that dream is hard to realize now, because the newer generation is getting buffed like crazy. And Konohamaru's background, although it has a lot of potential and is genuinely inspiring, seems to have been forgotten as the author shifted focus to the next generation. Alright, that's it for today. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.